It's built into our culture. It doesn't have to be. But that's what happens when you start to ignore things about like the spiritual. Because how long does the spiritual go on for? Ever. How long does this physical life go on for? Very temporary. And so we get hyper-focused on the temporary, and then eventually it just constricts and constricts and constricts to where we think about right now, this moment right now. And then we celebrate the idea of YOLO. YOLO, by the way, is true. You only live once. That should not therefore mean let's just throw it all away in this one instant. What it should say is you only live once, so take it seriously. Take it seriously. You've got this one shot. You've got this one chance. What are you going to do with it? You know what you should be doing with it. You know what you should be doing with it. When we say, I don't know what to do, you probably do. But there's that word there, isn't it? Courage. It's having the courage to tell the truth. The courage to do the right thing. What if they think I'm crazy? They will. I heard this guy one time talked a lot about suffering. He said life is suffering. Maybe you've met him before. Yeah, he says life is suffering. We don't get to choose not to suffer. What are you going to suffer for? You're going to suffer for people thinking you're crazy? Why do they think you're crazy? Because they don't know any better. That's all it is. And it isn't like a patronizing, oh, you just don't know. No, it's like, dude, you just don't know. But you can't force knowledge on anybody. If there's anything that public education should teach us, it's that. You can't force knowledge on anybody. Yet to become anything takes time and patience and energy. And yet it's funny that we don't put that time and energy into being a human being, into knowing what it is to be a human being, into being, wow, it's lofty, but for being good. And all I'm saying is that you're so much more important than this moment right now, which, by the way, is real. This moment is real. But you're so much more than that, man. People you're going to find, people are really compliant, man. A lot of times people are looking for leadership. Like I've said before, that the audience is bullshit. We don't know what we want. We also don't know what we should be doing. And so a lot of times we're looking to somebody. Now, something like that, by the way, why wouldn't he now start to adopt those traits? Because, yeah, it's intimidating. But then that also caused him to have to self-reflect and say, ooh, there's a deficiency in me. And what's causing him to behave that way in the first place is a fear of facing the deficiency. That's why it's difficult for us sometimes to be around really great people, really strong people, really accomplished people, because that means that we have to kind of either rise or get cast away and get found out. Like you guys, I'm sure you guys have heard of imposter syndrome before. And that's when you get some kind of an award or you get praised in some way, and you're afraid of, or you get a job you don't think that you deserve, and then you're afraid of getting found out. People are going to think you're an imposter. So, what else? Yeah.
I was thinking that an act of courage would be to stand up to evil, but things that do evil are human. So, if an act of courage is to do evil, it could be to stand up to man. And since you go against man, maybe they think that they're sinister.
Yeah. By the way, what's the best way to sabotage a person? Yeah. Try and get them to do what you're doing, because if you're a good person and you're around bad people are you get nervous because they're going to get found out, perhaps. Now, that's why they don't want you around, because you aren't susceptible to the same thing. They have nothing on you. And so, I'll bring it up again. There's a reason that people went to Diddy parties. There's a reason that a lot of people are really nervous about them right now. Because if you weren't participating, you're not on the next record. If you're not participating, you're not at the next party. That's not going to get you that next gig. You're not going to go on tour with so-and-so. So people don't want you around unless you participated in it, because now you're just as dirty as them. And you're just as vulnerable as they are. There's a reason we haven't seen the Epstein list yet, still. Yeah. Yeah, that's something, that last part there, we see honest people as crazy a lot of times. Have you noticed? Like I was telling you the story about Diogenes, well, a couple stories about Diogenes. I didn't even tell you the worst stories about Diogenes. There's some I can't even talk about in class. And why was Diogenes so scary? Well, because he did what everybody else wishes that they could do. That's why that story about him and Alexander is so important. If I were an Alexander, I would want to be Diogenes. And Diogenes says, I understand. If I weren't Diogenes, I too would want to be Diogenes. Because he was so free. He could do whatever he wanted to. What could you take from him? His life? Ooh. That's going to happen anyway. All that's doing is just speeding it up if you take his life. But that's that guy who he was himself, and because we thought he was himself, we thought he was crazy. Remember, it says it's not that I'm mad. He says it's not that I'm crazy. It's that my mind thinks differently from yours. Now understand that that's in 2025, that means something to us that we can kind of pontificate on, but in his time that meant something very specific. If you remember me talking about Marcus Aurelius and the idea that people do evil because they don't know any better. People do the things that they do oftentimes because they just don't know any better. People will lie because they think it's going to benefit them right now, but they don't see the long-term ramifications of that lie. People will cheat and steal and do all kinds of terrible things because they don't see the long-term implications of that. And sometimes it's the worst, most insidious kind because it's quiet. It's unconscious. If you're lying to lots of people, you know lying is bad. It's in your soul. You already know it's bad. So what do you have to do? Well, you have to justify it. Well, everybody does it. Yeah, and if everybody does it, then that means you can't trust anybody, which means you can't form long-term, lasting, deep, meaningful, intimate relationships with anybody. You can't have any real friends. And what that therefore also means is you yourself can't be a friend to anybody because you can't take on those characteristics because you can't trust anybody. And yet we don't see things in that scale. We tend to think of things as right now. And we've been programmed very deeply at this human physical level to think about right now. Because what's going to happen a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now? How often do we think about that? I was mentioning last class that, like for example, in our country, we tend to think of long term like 4 years. Who's going to be president in 4 years? And if a president wins a term, maybe 8 years. And that for us is like, dude, 8 years from now, that's unbelievable. You look at a country like China. China has a 100-year plan that they're implementing. They're not looking for themselves right now. They're not even looking just at their children. They're looking at their grandchildren, their great-grandchildren, 100 years down the road. That's a long time for us to plan. And maybe you don't want to plan that long for your own life. That's probably a fair bet that you won't be here in 100 years. But maybe with some of the advancements that we have, you might be. But for your life, looking long-term, think about what that might be. And it's not even just in terms of time. Start to think about long-term in terms of scope. Because we think about time, we're talking about our physical lives, our physical bodies. What's my physical life going to look like in 10 years? But that's something else. That's an idea I'm still trying to work out. But there's this deeper thing about what is my character going to look like? What's the expanse of that? I won't bore you with that. I'm still working this thing out. But you're right, like people with courage, because there's two parts going on here. First off, going back to what Ariana said, you have to be honest. So you have to have an idea of what truth is. So you have to, and not just like, oh, I heard this one thing, and so we repeat it. No, like having truth, really having an idea, and having the courage to share it, and being honest about it. And then when you come across people like that, we just think that they're crazy. We just, I don't know, call them philosophers or comedians, or we kill them. It's like, I've talked to before, what happens if you try to change the world? Remember? What happens?
You're murdered.
What's that?
Murdered.
Murdered. Get shot. We talked about that, right? Think about all the people in history who tried to change the world. They've changed it for the better. They get shot, except for Socrates, except for Jesus, right? He just got crucified. But if you try to change the world's going to stand against you. Why? Because the world is what it presently is. And the world finds itself constantly at odds with the truth. And that's one of those things about trying to keep us so focused. And it isn't like a nefarious thing of like there's a cabal somewhere of people in smoke-filled rooms saying, let's make them think only about the short term. But that is the effect of all of our advertising, of our marketing, in terms of our social, of our society. It's built into our culture. It doesn't have to be, but that's what happens when you start to ignore things about like the spiritual. Because how long does the spiritual go on for? Ever. How long does this physical life go on for? Very temporary. And so we get hyper focused on the temporary, and then eventually it just constricts and constricts and constricts to where we think about right now, this moment right now. And then we celebrate the idea of YOLO. YOLO, by the way, is true. You only live once. That should not therefore mean let's just throw it all away in this one instant. What it should say is you only live once, so take it seriously. Take it seriously. You've got this one shot. You've got this one chance. What are you going to do with it? You know what you should be doing with it. You know what you should be doing with it. When we say, I don't know what to do, you probably do. But there's that word there, isn't it? Courage. It's having the courage to tell the truth. The courage to do the right thing. What if they think I'm crazy? They will. I heard this guy one time talked a lot about suffering. He said life is suffering. Maybe you've met him before. Yeah, he says life is suffering. We don't get to choose not to suffer. But what are you going to suffer for? You going to suffer for people thinking you're crazy? Well, why do they think you're crazy? Because they don't know any better. That's all it is. And it isn't like a patronizing, oh, you just don't know. No, it's like, dude, you just don't know. But you can't force knowledge on anybody. If there's anything that public education should teach us, it's that. You can't force knowledge on anybody. But what you can do is to be an example of a person. And people will think you're crazy, but they're also going to be intrigued. Plato himself, he was a playwright. He's a great writer, man. How does he all of a sudden become a philosopher? Because he encounters Socrates. And he says, whoa, what are plays? A lot of times they're poetry. What are you doing in a play? You're making stuff up. In other words, in Plato's mind, by the way, he comes to believe you're spreading lies. You're spreading fiction. Yeah, fiction is nice, but wouldn't it be better to know truth? It's not that fiction necessarily is designed to deceive you, but wouldn't it be better to know truth and to follow truth? How long does it take to become a playwright? You have to study it. You have to know it. You have to become anything takes time and patience and energy. And yet it's funny that we don't put that time and energy into being a human being, into knowing what it is to be a human being, into being, wow, it's lofty, but for being good. And it's hard because you have all of these things competing. Why? Because you're these two things, your spirit and your flesh. And a lot of times the spirit might be willing, but let's face it, man, the flesh is weak. Isn't that the case, that most of the lies that we tell are designed to satisfy that flesh part of us? And yet those are the very things that decay our souls, make it harder for us to live with ourselves. It sears the conscience, man. And so, yeah, you have the courage to tell the truth. You have the courage and the character to do it. Yeah, you're going to seem sinister. People aren't going to trust you. Why? Because they got nothing on you, man. You got nothing on you. You got nothing on you. And the more that people have on you, the more you have to conform or face the consequences. And so, which of those is going to be you? That's really up to you. It's your call. You know, we tend to go along with the short term because we don't look at the long-term implications, man. All I'm saying is that you're so much more important than this moment right now, which, by the way, is real. This moment is real. But you're so much more than that, man. Your whole life, however long it is, whether it's 100 years or whether it's 17, whatever it is, man. Any one moment is just one moment of all of that. And you're more important than that. But that's about seeing that about yourself. And I'm telling you it's true. So it's about seeing the truth of who you are. Now, of course, the frightening thing is when you realize that's true about everybody else also. So it should impact how we treat other people as well. But that's another time. Questions? Comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques? Happy Thursday. Yeah. All right.